My name is Liam Vance, 38 years old, a corporate lawyer in San Francisco. From the outside, my life might seem like the zenith of ambition. A corner office on a high floor of a downtown skyscraper, an income sufficient to never fret over bills, and an unblemished reputation in the legal world. But I don't live for those gilded trappings. My life is deliberately Spartan. A modest apartment in the inner Richmond, unbranded practical clothes, and a sturdy 12-year-old sedan that's been my faithful companion for over a decade. To me, wealth isn't for ostentatious display, it's a shield, ensuring that the people I cherish never face hardship. My parents, Daniel and Eleanor Vance, reside in a tranquil suburban town in Evergreen Valley, Oregon. They're both retired, and my deepest desire is for them to truly savor these golden years, free from the shadow of financial worry. Ever since my career found its footing, I've equipped them with a platinum credit card, emphasizing, use it freely, buy good food, take those trips you always dreamed of, or finally fix up that leaky roof on your old house. They would always respond with a heartfelt, "Thank you, Liam." But I knew deep down they didn't fully grasp the relentless hours, the missed holidays, the sheer grind it took to earn that money. To them, I was simply the successful son, a convenient, vague label they'd proudly drop into conversations with the neighbors. Then there's Noah, my younger brother, 7 years my junior. He had just returned from Tokyo after an 8-year stint, a blend of studying cutting-edge digital arts and working odd jobs. Noah had always been the son around which our family orbited. As a child, he was the quick-witted prankster who could effortlessly coax laughter from our parents, and undeniably, he was indulged far more than I ever was. I don't harbor resentment. Being the eldest, I've grown accustomed to stepping aside, but a persistent question lingered. Did my parents truly see me, or did they only perceive my function, the steadfast provider, the unwavering pillar of support? I vividly recall our childhood evenings. I'd be hunched over the kitchen table, grappling with complex homework, while Noah would be outside, his carefree shouts echoing through the backyard, utterly unburdened by academic pressure. Mom would emerge with a plate of fresh-baked cookies, her face alight with pride as she offered them to Noah. For me, there was usually just a brisk pat on the shoulder and a clipped, "Study hard, Liam." I truly didn't resent it, but those moments, those fleeting disparities, are etched within me like a tiny, irritating splinter that never quite works its way out. Noah arrived back on a crisp autumn afternoon, a whirlwind of vibrant stories from Kyoto. Its bustling Ginza streets, neon signs blazing, and the lucrative animation contracts he'd supposedly landed. My parents' faces illuminated as if he were the prodigal son himself, stepping back into the light. I stood quietly in the living room's periphery, offering a polite smile, but a familiar quiet ache began to pulse in my chest. He's been gone for so long, I reasoned with myself. They're just overjoyed. Yet that simmering feeling, no matter how desperately I tried to suppress it, stubbornly glowed like a tiny, unextinguished ember. I had meticulously orchestrated every detail for the reunion dinner. I'd set up an elaborate dining table at my parents' house, ordered their favorite gourmet Italian dishes from a local restaurant, and even sourced an incredibly rare, expensive bottle of Napa Valley Cabernet I knew Dad adored. When I arrived, my parents were entirely absorbed, enveloping Noah in hugs, hanging on his every word about his daring adventures in Nara. I silently set down the bags of food, retreated to the kitchen, and began the methodical process of setting the table. No one noticed. I hadn't expected effusive thanks, but a fleeting glance, a simple question about my 4-hour drive might have been enough. The dinner commenced, and the family's attention remained steadfastly anchored to Noah. He regaled them with tales of his grand creative projects, his small but incredibly chic studio apartment in Shinjuku, and how he'd mastered the intricate art of traditional Japanese calligraphy. Everyone roared with laughter, marveling at his perceived brilliance, while I sat there sipping my wine, offering a polite rhythmic nod to his every pronouncement. At one point, I attempted to interject, to share a brief anecdote about a monumental environmental lawsuit I'd just won, a case that had consumed 3 grueling years of my life. Dad merely grunted an almost inaudible response before pivoting back to Noah. "So, are you genuinely planning to open your own studio here in Oregon, son?" I managed a tight smile, swallowing the bitter pang of hurt, and coached myself. "It's fine, Liam. They're just exceptionally excited." That night, as I drove the long, lonely stretch back to San Francisco, I gazed out at the city lights, blurred and distorted by the relentless rain. My thoughts drifted to my parents, to Noah, to the countless years I had toiled relentlessly, striving to become the person they could unequivocally rely on. I didn't crave their effusive praise, but I yearned for them to truly see me, not as a cold, calculating, money-making machine, but as Liam, their son, Noah's brother. The weeks following the reunion dinner, I tried to slip back into my usual routine. The high-stakes office meetings, the intense courtroom battles, late nights hunched over my laptop with a lukewarm cup of artisanal coffee. It was all familiar, a predictable, safe loop. But something was profoundly off, like a jarring, discordant note in a symphony I'd been compelled to play for far too long. I couldn't dislodge the persistent images of my parents, of Noah, and most disturbingly of their gazes at the dinner, as if I were merely an indistinct shadow in the grand narrative of my brother's triumphant return. Then the credit card bill arrived. I usually don't scrutinize it line by line, just a quick scan to ensure no glaring errors. My parents had used the card for years, predominantly for routine necessities, weekly groceries, the occasional plumbing repair, or a short scenic drive to Crater Lake. The monthly balance rarely topped $3,500. But this time, the number flashing on my screen made me freeze, my coffee mug suspended mid-air. A staggering $8,000. I frowned, my stomach tightening, and pulled up the detailed transaction history. A bewildering series of unusual charges unfolded. Reservations at Michelin-starred restaurants I knew they'd never frequent, several large sums at an upscale furniture gallery, and a colossal transaction at a luxury car dealership. I tried to rationalize it. Perhaps my parents are finally renovating the house in a big way, or planning something significant for Noah. I called Mom. "Liam, why are you worrying?" Her voice was gentle, almost cooing, but carried an undercurrent of hurriedness. "Just a few things we needed to acquire, darling, you know. Noah's back and there's a considerable amount to organize." "What things, Mom?" I forced my voice to remain level, though my chest felt constricted and heavy. $8,000 isn't a trifle. Can you please elaborate?" She let out a light, tinkling laugh, the very sound I knew she employed to expertly deflect uncomfortable topics. "Oh, Liam, you're perpetually so serious. Don't fret, everything is perfectly fine." Then, with practiced ease, she seamlessly pivoted to inquire about my latest demanding case, as if my pressing question had never even been uttered. I hung up, a chilling sense of unease rising within me like an incoming tide. The next month's bill arrived, and this time, the figure was $25,000. I sat alone in my inner Richmond apartment, the dim amber glow of my reading lamp casting long, distorted shadows on the dining table where I meticulously spread out the statements. There was an enormous charge from a high-end real estate agency and several others from exclusive designer boutiques I knew with absolute certainty my parents would never set foot in. I called again. This time my voice was laced with urgency. Dad, what exactly is happening with the credit card? $25,000 in a single month?" He sighed heavily through the phone, his tone tinged with unmistakable irritation. Liam, don't make such a mountain out of a molehill. Just some absolutely necessary expenditures. You earn excellent money, don't you? What harm is there in letting us utilize it a little? I bit hard on my lip, swallowing the torrent of angry words that threatened to erupt. I just need to understand where the money is going, Dad. I'm not being parsimonious, but I have a right to comprehend these transactions. It's simply family matters, Liam. Don't probe too deeply. And then, he abruptly disconnected the call. I remained there, staring at the darkened phone screen, a profound emptiness spreading through my chest as if I'd been dealt a physical blow. Family matters. The phrase resonated in the silence of my apartment, but it offered no comfort, no warmth. Instead, it felt like an impenetrable wall, deliberately erected to obscure the painful truth. The following month, the bill didn't just escalate, it skyrocketed to a staggering $75,000. I didn't call them again. I simply couldn't bear the casual way my parents sidestepped my questions, the infuriating ease with which they made me feel petty and unreasonable for merely seeking honesty. I began to dig deeper, downloading the entire unredacted transaction history to my secure work computer. The charges were no longer random, they coalesced into a disturbing pattern. A massive sum at a Tesla dealership, another substantial debit at a luxury real estate development, and multiple expenditures for high-end watches and bespoke designer clothing. My blood began to boil, but I forced myself to remain outwardly calm. There had to be a logical explanation. Surely my parents wouldn't. A chilling suspicion began to solidify. I logged onto social media, navigating directly to Noah's profile. And there it was, a photo of him beaming, standing triumphantly in front of a brand new sleek Tesla Model S, the caption underneath reading, "Welcome to the new chapter, big moves ahead." My heart began to pound a furious rhythm against my ribs as I scrolled further. Another post just a few days later. Noah posing confidently in front of a sprawling modern house with gleaming glass walls. The caption announcing, "New house, new life. Immense gratitude to those who always have my back." A comment from Mom glowed brightly below. "So incredibly proud of you, Sammy," Noah's childhood nickname. I slammed my laptop shut, the sound echoing in the silent apartment, my breathing ragged and heavy. I desperately wanted to dismiss it as a coincidence, a cruel joke, but the cold, hard numbers didn't lie. I meticulously cross-referenced the dates of Noah's posts with the corresponding transactions on my credit card statement. They aligned with horrifying precision. The Tesla, the opulent house, all funded directly from my platinum card, my money, my endless toil. That night, sleep was an impossible dream. I sat on my sofa, staring blankly out the window, the distant city lights of San Francisco flickering like unasked, unanswerable questions. Why hadn't my parents told me? Why did they brazenly use my hard-earned money to acquire these extravagant items for Noah without a single word, a hint of consultation? I replayed the years of relentless grind in my mind, the countless sleepless nights spent meticulously poring over complex case files, the disciplined way I had lived so frugally, all so Daniel and Eleanor could enjoy a comfortable, worry-free retirement. And now I felt like an utter fool, a mere tool shamelessly exploited. A primal scream clawed at my throat. I wanted to call my parents right then in the dead of night and unleash a torrent of accusations, demand an immediate, unambiguous explanation. But I didn't. I simply remained there in the suffocating darkness, the pain spreading through me like a virulent ink stain on pristine paper. I knew with absolute certainty that I had to confront them. The next morning, I didn't report to work. I called in sick, a highly unusual occurrence that visibly surprised my assistant over the phone. I then embarked on the arduous 4-hour drive to Evergreen Valley, Oregon, my mind a turbulent maelstrom of conflicting emotions, incandescent anger warring with profound hurt. I deliberately didn't call ahead. I refused to grant my parents the precious time to concoct their predictable excuses. I needed the unvarnished truth, and I needed to hear it directly from their lips. When I finally arrived, pulling my old sedan into their driveway, my parents were in the backyard. Mom was meticulously tending to her rose bushes, watering them with a delicate hand, while Dad sat in his favorite Adirondack chair, engrossed in the morning paper. They looked up, startled by my unexpected appearance, but showed no immediate signs of concern. "Liam, why didn't you let us know you were coming?" Mom set down her watering can, wiping her hands on her floral apron, her smile as warm and inviting as ever. But I couldn't reciprocate. "We need to talk," I stated, my voice coming out harder, more strained than I had intended. "About the credit card." Dad slowly folded the newspaper, a deep frown etching itself onto his brow. "This again, Liam? Why are you perpetually so worked up over minor things?" I pulled out my phone, opened the damning statement, and placed it deliberately on the patio table in front of them. 8,000, then 25,000, then 75,000, and this month, $300,000. I want a precise accounting of where every single penny of that money went. Mom glanced nervously at Dad, then back at me, her eyes shimmering, threatening to well up with tears. "Liam, don't sensationalize this. It's family money, isn't it? We help each other, always have." "Help each other?" The blood surged to my head, my voice rising, trembling with suppressed rage. "Mom, Dad, I gave you that card so you could live comfortably, so you could enjoy your retirement, not to covertly buy luxury cars and sprawling houses for Noah." Silence descended, a heavy, suffocating blanket, as if all the oxygen had been abruptly siphoned from the sunny backyard. Dad slowly rose to his feet, his face flushed with indignation. "Liam, what in the world are you implying? You're the eldest. You carry a responsibility, a solemn duty to assist your brother. Noah needs a fresh new beginning, and you, Liam, you possess the means. Do you honestly desire for him to struggle and toil like you did back then in your early days?" I was utterly stunned, reeling as if I'd been struck across the face. "Responsibility?" I repeated, my voice barely a whisper, laced with disbelief. "I work 16, sometimes 20 hours a day. I live a life of stark frugality. I have never asked anyone for a single dime. I have done everything within my power so that you, both of you, wouldn't have a moment's worry. And now, you're audacious enough to claim it's my responsibility to purchase Noah a house, a Tesla?" Mom stepped forward, placing a placating hand on my shoulder, but I instinctively recoiled. "Liam, don't be selfish," she said, her voice soft, almost pleading, yet razor-sharp beneath the surface. "Noah is your flesh and blood brother. He's been away for such a long time. He needs us. You are successful, Liam. You can help. Why are you keeping such a meticulous score within your own family?" I stared at Mom, then at Dad, desperately searching for any flicker of understanding in their eyes, any sign that they comprehended the raw, searing pain this inflicted upon me. But in their gazes, I saw only cold reproach. I wasn't Liam, their son. I was a mere functional entity, a financial resource, a tool to ensure Noah's endless happiness. "I am not keeping score," I articulated, my voice raw with emotion, "but I deserve basic respect. You brazenly took my money without so much as a single conversation to acquire a car and a house for Noah. Did it ever cross your minds how that might make me feel?" Dad abruptly turned away, muttering something under his breath about me being overly sensitive. Mom simply shook her head slowly, as if I were a petulant child throwing an absurd tantrum. I stood there, rooted to the spot in the sun-drenched backyard of my parents' house, the very ground where I had spent my innocent childhood. But at that moment, I felt like an utter stranger. The truth plunged into my heart like a cold steel knife. They didn't just favor Noah, they took my sacrifices, my very essence, completely for granted. I turned sharply and walked towards my sedan, leaving my parents in their stunned, accusatory silence. As I drove away, tears welled uncontrollably, not from explosive anger, but from a profound, deep-seated pain. I had devoted my entire adult life to striving to be the exemplary son, the responsible brother, but in return, I had been utterly betrayed. I drove back to San Francisco in a heavy, oppressive silence, the radio off, only the monotonous drone of the engine and my own ragged breathing filling the confined space of the car. The highway stretched endlessly before me, but my mind drifted irrevocably to the past, to the fleeting, naive years when I truly believed I was meticulously building a strong, unbreakable family unit with my sweat, my integrity, and my unwavering sense of responsibility. The tears had long since dried, but the pain stubbornly smoldered within me like a deep, unhealed wound touched far too many times. I remembered the nascent days of my career when I was a raw 25-year-old fresh out of law school, toiling away for a modest firm with a barely livable salary. I rented a cramped, perpetually damp apartment in the Tenderloin, where the persistent odor of mildew clung stubbornly to the walls and the hot water was a capricious luxury, working only when it arbitrarily felt inclined. I routinely worked 16, sometimes 20 hours a day, meticulously drafting intricate contracts, poring over dense legal research, sometimes simply collapsing asleep at my desk surrounded by a chaotic flurry of scattered papers. On those desolate nights, when the sprawling city slept soundly, I whispered to myself, "I'm doing this, all of this for Mom and Dad, so they will never have to worry in their twilight years." I harbored no extravagant dreams of sprawling mansions or gleaming sports cars. I didn't crave fame or adoration. My sole desire was for my family to be undeniably secure. Noah was still in high school then, utterly carefree and notoriously spoiled. He effortlessly received the latest designer sneakers from our parents whenever his school basketball team won a game, and was inexplicably forgiven with baffling ease whenever he chose to skip classes to idly hang out with his friends. I distinctly remember one occasion when I returned home for a rare visit. My parents, beaming with unrestrained pride, eagerly showed off a vibrant painting Noah had created in his art class. They ceremoniously hung it on the living room wall, their faces radiating pure adoration. I glanced at the painting, then at my own law school diploma, still pristine and unopened in its cardboard box tucked away in my bag. I said nothing, simply managed a tight, forced smile. But something deep inside me stung, a small, persistent prickle, like a fresh scratch. When my career finally began to flourish, when I started consistently landing substantial, high-profile contracts, I consciously made no alterations to my austere lifestyle. I continued to drive my old, reliable sedan, wore unpretentious shirts purchased from discount stores, and meticulously saved every single penny to dutifully send back to my parents. I presented them with the platinum credit card, emphasizing, "Use it. I will take care of absolutely everything." Mom enveloped me in a tight hug. Dad offered a proud, firm pat on my shoulder, but not a single soul inquired about the immense effort I had exerted to earn that money. No one asked if I was bone-weary, if I was desperately lonely, if I ever felt the crushing weight of it all. They simply reiterated, "Liam, you are our unparalleled pride and joy." But that pride, I slowly, painfully realized, was nothing more than a convenient label, devoid of genuine, unconditional love for me, the person I truly was. I distinctly recalled the numerous times Noah had floundered, like when he had impulsively squandered the substantial savings our parents had painstakingly given him on a catastrophically failed tech venture in Tokyo. My parents had called me, their voices thick with anxiety, and I, without hesitation or question, had immediately wired the money. Noah, true to form, never offered a word of thanks, never an apology. He simply flashed that disarming grin of his and declared, "You're a true superhero, Liam." I would force a smile in return, but that smile grew progressively more strained, more artificial with each passing instance. I found myself wondering, did anyone in my immediate family ever truly see me? Did they comprehend the endless nights I had sacrificed sleep? The lucrative opportunities I had deliberately turned down to prioritize their comfort? Did they see me, Liam, the flawed, complex human being, and not merely the efficient, dependable, money-making machine they had come to rely upon? Sitting alone in my apartment that night, the dim yellow glow of the lamp casting elongated shadows on a framed family photograph on the shelf. Me, Noah, Mom, and Dad, all smiling brightly at a picnic from a decade ago. I stared at it but felt no warmth, no comforting familiarity. I saw a younger Liam perpetually striving to do what was right, always sacrificing but never truly loved in the same effortless, unburdened way Noah was. That insidious favoritism, I realized with a gut-wrenching clarity, wasn't a recent development. It had always been there, a silent, pervasive presence. I had simply been too preoccupied, too burdened by the crushing weight of carrying everyone's load, to ever truly notice. Sleep remained an elusive phantom that night. My apartment, once a cherished refuge from the relentless pressures of the outside world, now felt like a vast, empty expanse, perfectly mirroring the cavernous ache in my heart. I sat on the sofa, my laptop open before me, the credit card statement glowing with a stark, accusatory light. $300,000. That astronomical figure wasn't merely a sum of money. It was a devastating tally of my implicit trust, my painstaking sacrifices, all callously discarded by my parents and Noah without a single truthful explanation. I replayed the traumatic confrontation in Evergreen Valley about the way my parents had looked at me, not with an ounce of remorse, but with unadulterated reproach. "Don't be selfish, Liam," Mom's voice echoed in my memory. "You have a responsibility," Dad had sternly declared. But what, I mused bitterly, is responsibility if it operates solely as a one-way street? I had unreservedly given them everything, my invaluable time, my finite energy, my substantial money. But in return, I had been mercilessly used. I wasn't their beloved son, nor Noah's loyal brother. I was, unequivocally, a mere bank, a convenient tool. And when I dared to articulate questions, I was immediately branded as the petty, unreasonable one. I picked up my phone, my finger hovering precariously over the bank's customer service number. A small, desperate part of me yearned to call my parents, to extend one final fragile chance for them to offer a genuine explanation, a sincere apology. But I knew, with grim certainty, that if I did, they would merely evade again, twisting the narrative to make me feel as though I were the one in the wrong. I was utterly exhausted by the relentless charade of being the good guy, weary of perpetually sacrificing without ever truly being seen, acknowledged, or appreciated. I had given them far too much, for far too long. I dialed the bank. The employee's voice was calm, professionally detached. "Mr. Vance, which credit card account would you like to deactivate?" I recited the lengthy card number, my voice surprisingly steady, though my heart pounded an erratic, frantic rhythm against my ribs. "Would you like to simply set a new limit or cancel it entirely?" she inquired. "Cancel," I stated without a flicker of hesitation. "Cancel it permanently." When I finally hung up, a cold, invigorating rush coursed through me, as if I had just severed an invisible constricting tether that had bound me for decades. The intense anger that had consumed me for so long had miraculously dissipated. For the first time in years, I felt an overwhelming sense of profound relief. I had spent my entire life bearing the colossal weight, meticulously embodying the role of the good son, the responsible brother. But now, finally, I yearned to live authentically for myself. I gently closed the laptop, rose from the sofa, and gazed out the window. San Francisco was still vibrantly alive, its myriad lights still twinkling defiantly. And somewhere out there, my parents and Noah were undoubtedly continuing with their lives, blissfully unaware that everything, for me, had irrevocably changed. I had no idea how they would react when they eventually discovered the card's cancellation, but this time, I genuinely didn't care. I had done enough, and now, my sole imperative was to protect myself. The day I finally canceled the credit card, it felt as though a colossal boulder had been effortlessly lifted from my chest. Yet I knew with chilling certainty that somewhere in Evergreen Valley, Oregon, that same boulder was poised to crash down with devastating force upon my parents and Noah. And I wasn't entirely sure I was emotionally prepared to confront the inevitable fallout. I tried, with a desperate sense of normalcy, to slip back into my established routine. The relentless demands of the office, the intricate dance of case files, the solitary morning runs along the Golden Gate Bridge shoreline. But my mind stubbornly kept drifting back to them. I wondered incessantly how they would react, whether they would unleash a torrent of accusatory calls, assign blame entirely to me, or simply retreat into a resentful silence. I braced myself mentally for every conceivable possibility, but deep down, a faint, fragile hope flickered that perhaps, just perhaps, they might finally understand. A full week passed without a single call. I checked my phone every single evening, half expecting, half dreading the inevitable. The silence itself was profoundly unnerving, like a tumultuous storm silently gathering on the distant horizon. Then one crisp morning, while I was deeply engrossed in a crucial meeting with a major client, my phone vibrated incessantly. I glanced discreetly at the screen. Mom's number. I let it ring, my heart pounding a frantic drum against my ribs, and when the meeting finally concluded, I saw 7 missed calls and a curt text message. Liam, call back now, big problem. I didn't return the call immediately. I simply sat in my office chair, staring blankly out the window, the morning sunlight glinting off the polished skyscrapers of downtown San Francisco. I knew with absolute certainty what was transpiring. The credit card had been canceled, and now, finally, they were being forced to confront the harsh, undeniable consequences. I took a deep, fortifying breath and slowly dialed. Mom? Liam. Her voice, when it came through, was a frantic, trembling shriek. What on earth is wrong with the card? We desperately needed money to cover some pressing bills, and the bank is saying it's completely inactive now. I canceled it, Mom, I stated, my voice remarkably calm, though a heavy weight pressed down on my chest. I explained to you and Dad that I fundamentally disagreed with how you were utilizing the funds. I cannot and will not continue to sustain this. But Liam, you don't comprehend. She was almost screaming now, her voice cracking with desperation. Noah desperately needs money to pay off the house. The bank is threatening foreclosure. You cannot abandon your brother like this, Liam. I bit hard on my lip, a surge of renewed anger rising within me, but I kept my voice steady. Mom, I am not abandoning anyone, but I am not Noah's personal bank. He bought a house, a Tesla, with my money, and not a single soul bothered to ask me. Now he must assume his own responsibility. Mom began to cry, her sobs sharp and disorienting, causing me to falter for a brief, agonizing moment. Liam, how can you be so utterly cold? We are family. You possess wealth, You are supposed to help." I remained silent, allowing her cutting words to echo in the space between us. Family. That singular word, once a bastion of warmth and belonging, now felt like a flimsy, transparent excuse for unadulterated exploitation. "Mom," I finally said, my voice heavy with a weariness that went bone deep. "I have helped far too much. I truly have nothing left to give." I hung up, my hands trembling slightly. The phone buzzed immediately. Dad. This time I didn't answer. I simply could not bear another torrent of arguments, more infuriating accusations that I was selfish, that I was cruelly betraying my own family. I silenced the phone, shoved it roughly into a drawer, and attempted to force my concentration back to my work. But my mind remained a desolate blank. A few weeks later, news trickled back to me from a mutual acquaintance of Noah and myself. Noah's new house had indeed received a formal foreclosure notice from the bank. He was utterly unable to afford the escalating loan payments, and my parents, stripped of access to my credit card, possessed no viable means to assist him. Noah reportedly began selling off his possessions: the enormous flat-screen TV, the designer furniture, even the gleaming Tesla Model S she'd so brazenly flaunted on social media. I thought perhaps I would feel a profound sense of vindication, a triumphant satisfaction, but I didn't. Instead, I just felt a hollow emptiness, as if I were passively observing a family I once deeply loved slowly, agonizingly collapse from an unbridgeable distance. My parents called a few more times, leaving lengthy, emotionally charged voicemails. Some were desperate pleas, others seethed with raw anger. "Liam, you have utterly ruined Noah's life." Dad's voice boomed in one message, thick with venom. "You are his brother. How could you possibly be so heartless?" I listened to them all, then, with a practiced detachment, deleted them without responding. I harbored no desire to argue further, no inclination to explain myself again. I had articulated my stance with unwavering clarity, and now I needed to steadfastly stand by my difficult decision. Noah didn't call. I wasn't surprised. He had always possessed an uncanny knack for skillfully dodging responsibility, allowing our parents to perpetually clean up his self-inflicted messes. But I heard through mutual friends that he was undeniably struggling. His digital design work was sporadic and unstable, and the lavish, unsustainable lifestyle he'd so recklessly constructed with my money was now an unbearable burden. A small, almost imperceptible part of me felt a pang of pity for him, but a much larger, dominant part was simply utterly exhausted. I hadn't ruined Noah's life. He and our parents had orchestrated that outcome themselves. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, gazing out at the vast, twinkling expanse of San Francisco. The city was still vibrantly alive, still buzzing with its ceaseless energy. But I felt strangely detached, as if I no longer truly belonged anywhere. My parents and Noah were facing the grim consequences of their choices, and I knew unequivocally that they blamed me. But for the very first time, I felt no accompanying guilt. I had finally done the right thing, not for them, but for myself. After canceling the card, I felt a strange, profound void. It wasn't the sharp, agonizing pain or the burning embers of anger that I had grown accustomed to. Instead, it was a stillness, a deep, abiding quietude, as if I had, at long last, stepped out of a suffocating, airless room and into the refreshing embrace of crisp, clean air. For the first time in years, I didn't have to carry the invisible weight of my parents' escalating expectations. Noah's endless demands, the specter of unexpected egregious bills, or the crushing burden of unspoken inherited responsibilities. It was just me, Liam, and that realization was simultaneously terrifying and utterly liberating. I began to change, not in grand, dramatic gestures, but in small, deliberate steps, as if relearning the very art of living. I stopped compulsively checking my phone every hour, stopped bracing myself for accusatory, guilt-tripping messages from my parents. I spent my evenings reading complex literary fiction, listening to the intricate melodies of jazz, or simply walking aimlessly along the Golden Gate Bridge shoreline, allowing the city lights to softly remind me that life, vibrant and resilient, unequivocally goes on. I realized with a heavy heart that I had tragically neglected myself for far too long, living like a mere machine designed solely to serve my family's perceived needs, utterly forgetting that I too deserved happiness, peace, and fulfillment. One afternoon, I stood in front of the full-length mirror in my apartment, truly looking at the 38-year-old man staring back. A few flecks of gray tracing the edges of his temples, the subtle, lingering tiredness in his eyes. I thought about the old sedan that had faithfully served me for 12 long years, the unpretentious discount clothes I meticulously wore to save every possible penny, the modest apartment with its worn, familiar furniture. I had lived a life of deliberate simplicity, not because I lacked the desire for more, but because I was rigidly convinced that every cent of my hard-earned money belonged unequivocally towards securing my parents' comfortable, worry-free retirement. But now, the conviction burned within me. I wanted to live for myself. I ventured to a luxury car dealership one sun-drenched weekend afternoon. The salesman, a surprisingly amiable young guy, enthusiastically showed me around rows of gleaming, pristine vehicles. I didn't choose a Tesla like Noah's. I harbored no desire to prove anything to anyone, least of all to them. Instead, I meticulously picked out a sleek Lexus RX, silver gray, understated yet undeniably powerful and reliably robust. As I signed the contract, a strange, exhilarating thrill surged through me like a kid acquiring his very first long-coveted toy. Driving home, the windows rolled completely down, the cool San Francisco wind rushing through my hair. I laughed out loud to myself. A genuine, unburdened laugh, the first in what felt like an eternity. Next, I resolved to purchase a new apartment. I found a truly remarkable place in Nob Hill, not excessively far from my old residence in the inner Richmond, but immeasurably more spacious, boasting expansive floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking panoramic vista of the iconic San Francisco skyline. I signed a substantial mortgage, a financial decision I would have once considered wildly reckless, bordering on irresponsible. But now I felt no fear. I yearned for a space that was unequivocally my own, a sanctuary where I could embark on a fresh start, utterly free from the oppressive shadow of mounting bills or the suffocating weight of familial expectations. When I finally received the keys, I stood alone in the vast, empty apartment, sunlight streaming gloriously through the glass, and felt an overwhelming sense that I had, at long last, reclaimed a precious, long-lost piece of myself. I began to indulge myself, not extravagantly or ostentatiously, but precisely enough to genuinely appreciate the immense value of what I had painstakingly earned. I bought a new suit, not a hastily snatched clearance rack special, but a meticulously tailored one that draped flawlessly, fitting me with an impeccable precision, instantly making me feel more confident and commanding as I walked into the courtroom. I enthusiastically signed up for a gourmet cooking class, something I had always harbored a secret desire to try but had never found the time for amidst my relentless schedule. I learned with immense satisfaction to make fresh pasta from scratch, and every single moment spent in that sunlit kitchen made me feel more vibrant, more alive, as if I were triumphantly reclaiming the precious years I had irrevocably lost. The most profound transformation wasn't merely the acquisition of a new car or a sprawling apartment. It was the fundamental shift in how I perceived myself. I was no longer merely the eldest brother, perpetually burdened by the crushing weight of everyone else's problems. I was no longer the family's convenient utilitarian tool. I was Liam Vance, a dedicated lawyer, a complex man with his own aspirations, his own quiet sorrows, and an undeniable inherent right to live authentically for himself. The profound betrayal by my parents and Noah, though agonizingly painful at the time, had paradoxically set me irrevocably free. I no longer felt the suffocating pressure to please anyone else. My sole imperative was now to please myself. One lazy Saturday afternoon, as I was methodically unpacking the last few boxes in my new apartment, the doorbell chimed softly. I opened the door, and there, bathed in the pale, filtered San Francisco sunlight, stood Daniel, Eleanor, and Noah. No one was smiling. Mom looked noticeably older than I remembered her. Her hair grayer, her eyes rimmed with an unmistakable redness. Dad stood with his arms rigidly crossed, his face a mask of palpable tension. Noah stood slightly behind them, his head bowed, utterly lacking the confident, almost swaggering air I'd so frequently observed in his social media posts. "Liam," Mom spoke first, her voice strained, almost brittle. "We need to talk." I simply nodded, saying nothing, and invited them inside. The new apartment still carried the faint, fresh scent of paint, with a few unopened moving boxes stacked neatly in a corner. They gazed around, and I distinctly caught a flicker of surprise in Mom's eyes and a flash of irritation in Dad's. Noah steadfastly refused to meet my gaze, quietly slumping onto the plush new sofa. "You're living quite well, aren't you?" Dad said, his tone laced with a biting, undisguised bitterness. "New car, new house, while your own family's struggling on the verge of losing everything." I took a deep, steadying breath, keeping my voice meticulously calm. "Dad, I am living comfortably off the money I earned. I do not owe anyone anything." Mom began to cry, her sobs raw and uncontrolled. "Liam, we were wrong. I know your father and I hurt you deeply. We absolutely should not have used your money like that. But Noah's in such dire trouble, the bank is literally about to take his house. Can you just help one more time? Please, just this once." Noah finally looked up, his eyes tired but flickering with a desperate, almost pathetic hint of hope. "Liam, I'm truly sorry. I genuinely didn't think things would spiral out of control like this. I just wanted a fresh start. If you help me, I swear I will pay you back every single cent." I looked at them, my parents, my brother, the people who had once meant the entire world to me. A fleeting part of me, a deeply ingrained habit, yearned to reach out, to fix everything, to effortlessly slip back into the familiar role of the big brother who invariably solved all problems. But then, a torrent of memories flooded my mind, the countless nights I had sat alone, the escalating, infuriating bills, the cutting accusations that I was selfish. I vividly recalled the pervasive feeling of being systematically used, treated as a disposable tool. And I knew with absolute certainty that if I yielded this time, if I offered even a sliver of assistance, the entire painful cycle would inexorably repeat itself. "No," I said, my voice firm, devoid of any waver. "I have given far too much. I gave you the card so you could live comfortably, so you could enjoy your retirement, not to covertly buy houses and luxury cars for Noah. I am truly sorry Noah is struggling, but that, Daniel, is unequivocally not my responsibility." Dad shot to his feet, his face flushed scarlet with incandescent rage. "Liam, what blasphemy are you uttering? You are abandoning your own brother, your own family." "I am not abandoning anyone," I replied, meeting his furious gaze unflinchingly. "I am choosing myself. You chose Noah. You used my money without a single word of consultation, without my consent. Now you must face the consequences." Mom sobbed openly, but I stood resolute, unyielding. Noah lowered his head, completely silent. I stood up and walked deliberately to the front door, opening it wide. "I think we are done here." They left without a single backward glance. When the door closed, I remained standing there, my heart pounding, but not from pain or anger. I felt an immense sense of profound relief, as if I had, at long last, cut the very last invisible tether binding me to them. I wasn't angry anymore. I just wanted them unequivocally out of my life. The following month, I fully settled into my new apartment. I hung a vibrant painting on the wall, a tranquil seascape I'd purchased during a short restorative trip to Maine, where I stood before the vast, restless ocean and felt a sense of profound peace for the first time in what felt like years. I drove my new Lexus RX to work, not to ostentatiously show off, but simply because I cherished the empowering sense of freedom behind the wheel. I wore my meticulously tailored new suit, stood confidently in the courtroom, and felt an undeniable surge of strength, no longer haunted by the suffocating weight of my family's expectations. I heard sporadic news about my parents and Noah through mutual acquaintances. Noah's house had indeed been foreclosed upon, and he had reluctantly moved back in with our parents, working a series of part-time gigs to slowly chip away at his accumulating debts. My parents had been forced to drastically cut back on their spending, living solely off their retirement funds, no longer indulging in leisurely trips or lavish gourmet meals. They didn't call me, and I made no attempt to reach out either. I found no joy in witnessing their struggles, but I felt absolutely no guilt. They had, at a steep and painful cost, learned a vital lesson about selfishness, about taking love and responsibility so casually for granted. I started living a life truly aligned with my own values. I joined a dynamic nonprofit organization, dedicating my time to helping young people from challenging backgrounds launch their careers, because I intimately understood what it felt like to rise entirely on your own. I traveled, not extravagantly, but sufficiently to genuinely experience the world. A week exploring the breathtaking landscapes of Iceland, a rigorous hiking trip through the majestic Rockies in Colorado. I bought a state-of-the-art coffee machine, and every single morning I sat by the expansive window, savoring my freshly brewed coffee, watching Manhattan slowly awaken, feeling a profound sense that I, Liam Vance, finally belonged entirely to myself. My newfound freedom wasn't simply about the luxurious new car, the spacious, sun-drenched apartment, or the exhilarating trips. It was the visceral, liberating feeling of being unbound, of no longer living a life dictated by the desperate need to please others. I was Liam Vance, not merely the eldest brother, not merely the efficient money-making machine. I was a man with his own dreams, his own deeply etched scars, and a profound, exhilarating life, at long last, to truly live. One serene evening, I stood on my apartment's balcony, gazing out at the twinkling, endless city lights. A gentle breeze carrying the faint, earthy scent of the Hudson River softly caressed my face. I smiled, not for anyone else, not for any external validation, but solely for myself. My life, finally and irrevocably, was my own.